So, in today's video, we are going to paint some battle-ready Imperial Fists. This guy is going to be done with just the straight-up Iyanden Yellow contrast paint thrown onto it, and then the trim done with the black, a brown, and 2 reds. This guy had a bit of an undershade done with the Skelton Horde, very thin down with the medium. This guy was painted with the airbrush, and there's a bit of a secret about the airbrush. So you might want to stay tuned, and hopefully that will surprise you. And that's pretty much it, so let's get on with it. This guy is going to get straight up Iyanden Yellow, thinned 2 parts medium to 1 part paint. This guy is going to get a pre-shade done with Skelton Horde, my thin Skelton Horde, which is 2 parts contrast medium to 1 part paint. This guy we're going to try something special with, so you'll want to stick around for that one. That should be unusual, and hopefully it'll prove a good experiment. Just one detail is he's going to be done with an airbrush. There will be a few more bits and pieces done to him, but he's going to be done with the airbrush, these two with a standard brush. So we're going to start with the sergeant. He, as I said, I've got my little pot with a little bit left in it of Skelton Horde that has been thinned 2 parts medium to 1 part paint. I'm going to slap that all over him, let it dry in, then dry brush him up. So this is basically a technique that hopefully somebody who's just starting out in the hobby can use to try to add a little bit of extra oomph to their models. So that's what we're going to try. So I'm just going to all over with the Skelton Horde thinned 2 parts medium to 1 part paint, and then we'll come back. That concludes this week's tutorial on how to paint Deathwing. No, that's it really. I mean, that's the Skelton Horde. As you can see, if I bring in Yomboyo, it's darkened it down a little bit. I think it would make a big difference once the yellow goes on, but I want to give it a quick dry brush with the Wraith Bone just to bring out the highlights again. So the only important thing you've got to remember is if you see it pulling anywhere you don't want it, like if you have a look at his, if I turn him around a little bit, you'll see in the corner of his shoulder pad, you'll just see there's a little bit, so just gently touch your brush to it to wick it away. That's all you really need to do if there's a spot where it's too much. With thin down like this, it really does make all the difference. Focus, there we go. So yeah, the back of that shoulder pad's probably a little bit too thick, so we'll just gently touch our brush, and there's maybe a little tiny bit of pulling there and there, so all you're really doing is almost washing it away again, but that'll do for now. So now he goes off to the back and he comes in, so we're just going to mix it up in this little disposable shot glass. So I want 2 decent squirts of contrast medium. 1, 2, and then shake up our Iyanden Yellow again. Alright, that's that. Just going to mix this up. This is quite hard to do when you're not holding it. But there we go. So I probably don't want that much. Right. And now I'm going to plaster the paint on this guy. So I'll be back when it's done. So I have tweaked the white balance in my camera. It was looking slightly off. I've got a weird eclectic range of lights here, so I can't really guarantee the color temperature. I need to start doing manual white balance, but for now this looks pretty much what I'm seeing. So this is it thinned down 2 to 1. It's still very yellow, obviously. I'm going to leave him for now, and I might do another coat just to see if it brings it out. But what I'm going to do now is switch back to the sergeant. I think he's nearly dry. Let me just check. Yeah, a few little bits of him aren't. And one thing to note as well is it seems to have really taken to that foot and not to that foot, so I might add a little bit more to his other foot, just almost like a recess shade, so I'll do that and come back. Alright, there we go, just let him dry off. And in the meantime I'm going to airbrush this guy with our undershade of Druchii Violet. There we go. So I shall come back when that is done. Okay, I've given him a quick airbrush with Druchii Violet, which is actually trickier than I thought it would be. The shade really doesn't dry on its way to the mini at all, so you are literally hitting it with very wet ink. So it's a bit tricky, so just be aware of that if you're trying to do it. As you can see on his left leg, no, his right leg, our left, from where we're looking at him. So I shall point out this leg. I have given it a little bit extra with the brush, just to see if that makes much of a difference. I kind of want the effect to be subtle yet there, so I don't know if that will help or not, but we'll let that dry in. I think the sergeant's nearly ready for his dry brush. Although I'm debating whether I should use a zenithal with the airbrush just for ease, but no, I'll do it right, I'll dry brush him. So here's our sergeant before dry brushing. That's him after dry brushing. I think you can see the difference, he's a little bit lighter, looking good. So we'll apply our Iyanden Yellow now and see how that goes. Alright, there's the sergeant against his compatriot. Did I miss the inside of his boot? I bloody did. There we go. So, yeah. Obviously it needs to dry. And then we'll come back to it and see what it looks like. But what we're going to do now is do a zenithal of Wraithbone on him. And I just like to say that is a gorgeous purple effect. And all that is Druchii Violet airbrushed on. And it's absolutely gorgeous. The airbrush is certainly something worth buying. If you haven't got one, it should be your next purchase, realistically, especially if you're painting any number of models. Except metallics. Well, Vallejo Game Air Model Air. Anyway, the Vallejo metallics, I've got the set of those. They're gorgeous paints. Gorgeous paints. But let's get him zenithaled and we'll come back to it. Get that hairy arm out of the way. See you shortly. Okay, there he is. I gave a very light dusting from sort of this angle, like on a good distance away, just to take the edge off the purple. Then it was mostly from above. You'll see that that looks pretty white, and then from below you'll see there's an awful lot of purple in there. So from the front we've got a relatively good quantity of the Wraithbone on. From above it's pretty much pure Wraithbone, and from below there's pretty much nothing. So I'm hoping that when the yellow goes on this, it looks nice. So there's just a few spots there that probably need to dry off. If you can see them on the shoulder pads, they're probably a bit wet. I just noticed that, speaking of shoulder pads, that's probably a bit too much. Yeah, that looks terrible. There we go. Just take the edge off it a little bit. There. Not that you can see that in the camera, but anyway. So, what we're going to do is we're going to take the airbrush. We're going to take our, this is our 2 parts Iyanden Yellow, sorry, 1 part Iyanden Yellow. Let no paint be wasted. So there it is in the cup. And I'm going to airbrush it all over him, and we're going to see what that looks like. So I shall be back momentarily. And done. So that's him. That worked really well. If you look at him from below, really desaturated browns, all the shadows. If you look at him from the top, the lovely bright Iyanden Yellow, and then you put him in there and it's quite well shaded. I may have gone a bit overboard with it, but you can certainly see on this foot, that was one that had the bit extra purple, but I think that's worked really well. So this is the results we've got so far. Here is, I think it's a bit peel. Now that was mixed 2 to 1 to try to get a smoother coat. So what I'm going to do is give these two another 2 to 1 coat of Iyanden Yellow to contrast medium. Sorry, 2 to 1 of contrast medium to Iyanden Yellow. So 1 part paint to 2 parts medium. So we're going to let that dry. Then I'm going to start tidying up. What I'm going to do now is paint up the trim. So he's going to get they're all going to get their Aquillas done with the Flesh Terror red. They're going to get the red of the shoulder pads trimming done with the Blood Angels red. I'm just going to go straight over the top of the yellow, no fancy stuff. His helmet, Blood Angels red. The guns are going to be Black Templar, and then I'll use a brown on the leather pouches and Black Templar in the joints of the armor. And then we'll come back and see how that looks. Okay, so that's the models touched up with the Wraithbone again, just to see how much of a difference it makes. And now I'm going to throw on the rest of the contrast paints. There we go. There's the trim and the guns all done. So these would be battle ready Imperial Fists. Relatively easy to do. Might want to do a bit more on his face. Didn't really come out too well, but another splot of paint on that's fine. Didn't do the eyes again. Remember, this is his battle ready. Eyes are fiddly little buggers. And the main problem with contrast paints is if you do make a mistake, you can't just go over it with even a couple of thin layers. It's too transparent. It doesn't work very well for that. But it does work for, I think, things like the guns. If you're just going to slather black on it, you can still see some white though, so it's too easy to miss bits, I think. But yeah, there's some battle ready Imperial Fists. So the secret to the airbrush for this was that it was done using an airbrush that cost me £25 off Amazon. Now that's not just the airbrush, which I shall move into shot now. That's the secret. This was done using this airbrush and compressor kit that cost me £25 from Amazon. I was absolutely stunned that it actually could paint. I mean, it's not professional level. There are improvements that could be made, but it primed it, base coated it, zenithaled it, undershaded it, and then sprayed the Iyanden Yellow perfectly fine. And that is a really good tabletop standard. You could take it to the next level. There's no edge highlighting done, or you could have done another zenithal and then another blast of the yellow to try to really bring the yellow, make it pop. You could have used normal paints on the gun instead of the contrast paints. I find the contrast paints, to get the contrast effect, you have to really load the brush up, and that makes doing details really annoying. But yeah, 25 quid airbrush. If you've made it this far, thanks very much for watching. There's another couple of videos there you can click on. You can click on the subscribe button if you want to. Like the video if you want to. Stick a comment down if you've anything to say. And in the meantime, happy wargaming. And I'll see you next time.